We're getting started a lot later than I wanted to. But tonight's going to be all about UI. Um, so the goal is going to be to kind of quickly sketch out just look and feel. I'm not really going to focus on behavior too much, and I'm really not even going to focus on like a lot of detail. We're just going to kind of block out the general form of the chat window. There's some other kind of frameworky type things we're going to do as far as how we handle layouts inside of WAC. So we're going to have at least two different layouts. One's going to be kind of like an empty splash layout that would be good for a login form or something like that. The other is going to be for the actual chat interface, channel browser, all that sort of thing. Let that cat out. Scratch at the door. So, let's see what we got on deck. User interface prototyping, completely client side. Yeah. I typed a lot there apparently. So yeah, this kind of getting into, things like our open API specifications or things like this composables API kind of imagine like a bridge between the front end and the back end in an API or whatever. So you're basically agreeing on like a common language that you both can share, and then imagine like you've got a team of 2 or 3 front end engineers and a team of 2 or 3 back end engineers that just went off and did work separately after you agreed on this interface between the two. And inevitably, as things change and they do work, you're going to find, that API, that interface that you built between the two teams is going to change. You're challenging it by doing development. So communication's a big part of this. So anyway, in our instance tonight, we're not even going to worry about this at all. We're mostly just trying to clone the look and feel, and then maybe tomorrow we'll come in and start. We're going to end up with a shit ton of HTML and CSS tonight, and not a whole lot of extracting these into components. So maybe tomorrow that's what we'll do, is that sort of thing. We've already kind of got this common language stuff handled, or at least a good start on it, because we've gone through writing those composables and we have our API mostly set up for kind of an MVP. So what I've done, I did this from the other machine, so don't have issues enabled, so I just created a discussion to paste some screenshots. So these are kind of some just references we'll come back to for different things. I've also got I created a Slack instance for WAC just to have some demo to poke around the app, and we'll be using this is the web browser version of it. Some of these screenshots you'll notice this is actually from the Electron app, so there's some different menus and some controls for closing the window. Just imagine those aren't there, because they won't be for right now. Now when we go to actually make the Electron app, this is they basically have hidden all the Chrome on the window, so the border around the window and the default close controls and all that, and they've re-implemented themselves. So that's something we'll have to do too, which will be easy to do because we'll basically just add in additional controls next to whatever, what we're already going to build, right? I also took some kind of responsive screenshots. So they got this, when it gets smaller, phone sized, the channel browser, kind of that pane goes away. You can click this menu up here to get it to swoop back in. We may do this tonight. I'm not sure. It depends on how quickly we go. I definitely don't want to be up till 2 a.m., but we'll see. I also want to do a light and dark mode. Thankfully, Tailwind makes this really easy for us to do. So we're going to start by working on the light mode, and then we will add additional classes with variants for styling the dark mode, and then configure Tailwind to be able to swap between the two pretty easy. For now, we'll just make that a manual thing we do. Maybe there's state on the app component, or I don't know, somewhere that will control it. Eventually, it'll be a user preference. just like it is on Real Slack. Grab some links down here. So I noticed that the Slack app itself, if we go look at like what their fonts are, inspect, it's like some specific variant of Lato that they're using. So font family Slack Lato. We can grab Lato straight off of Google Fonts, and we'll use this over whatever the default sans serif font is. The key is going to be us picking, we'll probably go with this regular. We'll probably also want to grab something that looks similar to their headings. So this black 900 might be good, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, so to kick things off, let's get our layout system in place. Because so this is going to be kind of our chat layout, and then this is going to be the type of layout we use for login, and that's basically it. So I've got WAC pulled up here, running the Vue dev server. Kind of ignore the fact that this is using our self-signed certificate, so I'm running the dev server over SSL. So if you want to see how to do that, you come into your Vue config, and this is configuration to get it to bind to all IP addresses to bind to all interfaces on the machine. It's probably unnecessary for simple setup like we're doing, but it's just something I always do. The next thing is to set kind of the public name for it, so we can pull in our config module and then reference the host name here. So this would be important if someone wanted to host this on like whack.dev or localhost or whatever they wanted to configure. We want to make sure this matches. Pull in our certain key, and we turn on hot reloading, which I think is the default, but I like to put it in here anyway. This we don't technically need because we're setting this host name here, but I'll leave it in there. So let's get a branch started. Make this a little bit wider. This window just needs to be big enough to not be inside of our breakpoint or whatever. Stash. This will be episode 10. UI beginnings is I think the name of the string. My YubiKey got hidden under all the windows. Alright, stash pop. Configure Vue dev server with SSL certificates. Okay. So what I like to do is to come in here and make a directory called layouts. And what we'll put in here is two single file components. One we can call empty, or you can call this splash too, that would work. The other might be like application or main or whatever. So we'll kind of initialize these as empty components for now. I think we're gonna say we'll just put H1s in here to say what the layout is. Give this a name, application, and then we'll do the same over here. All right, so over here, we're going to eventually bring in view router. I'm going to try to get away with not doing that right now, but we'll probably end up doing it tonight. Well, we can get away with not doing it. I was going to say we want to set up routing because like when you click on these channels, you actually see like in the URL it navigates around. I'm also not like entirely, I don't think, our clone is going to go so far as to like clone the literal like ID schemes that Slack uses in the URI and all that mess. We'll make it work for us. Like to me, we're not going to be doing multi-tenant stuff right now. This is technically, I think, the Slack instance ID, so the tenant ID. And then there's like tenant ID / channel is the channel. Client is just where they happen to host the web client at app.slack.com. So we have some flexibility here. We can take some artistic liberties. So let's do this. We'll get rid of doodle password for now. I honestly don't even know if we'll need any refs for this, but I'm going to go ahead and turn this off because it's going to get annoying. We'll turn it back on later when we get a little bit further along. If you ever want to modify Eslint rules, you can create an like a .eslint config in the root of the directory, or for like a view scaffolded app or view CLI app. They'll be listed right in the package.json. So eslint config, and you can find all your rules here. If you just set it to off, it turns it off. That array syntax or whatever, you can configure them to do different things. You see now it's not complaining, which is great. So for right now, we're not going to use the router. So one thing we will need is I'll need a ref that points at the current layout. So let's say const layout equals ref, and by default we'll make it application, right? So I'm going to put this up here. So it's the string application, but this could also be empty. So then we'll return layout here. All right. So these classes here, go over this a little bit. So this is something I like to put on, like, you can imagine this app component is actually mounted into a div in our index.html file, which should be like this. Yeah, so our app.viewDiv gets mounted inside of this div. And this div is, by default, going to take up the width as a block element, but it'll be like 1 pixel tall. So you won't see it. So one thing I like to do to not mess with this template at all is in my app shell, or root component instance, I'll put some classes here that kind of set defaults for everything. So in this case, we don't need item center and justify center. Those were there just to center the doodle when we were working on it. But making this a flex box with flex call makes the whole thing like the orientation's, column like this. And then we also say that it's the height of the screen. So as a div, it'll automatically be the width of the screen. If you're feeling froggy, you could come in here and just explicitly say that. I usually don't. But this is kind of a good starting point. And then you can do things like, let's say we have a div that's 32 high and we have a BG. It has a BG of like red just so we can see it, right? So now I can do this. And I see it on the page. We need to make sure that it's actually reloading our changes. Okay, so it is. So I must have restarted the dev server and didn't reload the tab. So if you ever see like your changes aren't automatically updating on the right, just reload your tab. And you've probably like the dev server crashed or whatever. So I'm gonna get this height 32, but let's say I wanted a box that would go the rest of the height of the screen and it would stay the height of the screen. So your first inclination might be, okay, well, I'm gonna make me another box, make this one blue so we can see the difference. And instead of height 32, I'll just do height full. Now this works because this flex parent will go to the end of the screen. But now let's say like I wanted a green box down at the bottom here, and I wanted the blue to fill up the entire space. Height full might work, but what will likely happen over time is you'll find weird issues with like children of this blue div. So what I like to do instead is say, especially if this is like a flex parent itself, so you can say flex 1, and this basically gets it to kind of go the entire height or fill the remaining space between these two. Something else you kind of notice is these heights changed when I did height full versus height or flex 1. That's some of the weirdness I'm talking about, and I think what we'll find is like your height full is 100% of its parent, which is height screen. So it goes a little higher and it kind of pushes into these divs. But if we do like a screenshot just to get the pixel height of this, it's like, let's say around 120, 127. And I mouse over this class. You know, my Intellisense plugin's been kind of bugging out on me. Is it? Let's see if it's auto-completing classes. It's not. I almost wonder, I'm not gonna mess with it now unless we get into like I'm not able to remember the classes or whatever. But anyway, the thought was I was gonna highlight over this and it would show our pixel value, and this is probably around like 127 pixels. So the height full is not true to the sizing or whatever. Flex 1's probably more what we want. So these are controlling their own heights. This is filling the remaining space. Anyway, this flex call, this little trick here is very useful to be able to set up layouts like this. So if we go back and look at Slack, we've got some of that sort of thing going on a bit. It's honestly, it's nested, that same thing going on. So the first bit is we've got, if I looked at, if I was trying to like clone an interface like this, I start looking for like logical groupings of things, or like find the boxes, find the rectangles in the UI. So immediately there's this section that kind of pops out, and we could call this like, you know, nav bar or something like that, right? And then eventually we put this in a component in and of itself, even if it didn't have a whole lot of behavior. It's the header or the header bar or something like that, and we can kind of push all that markup into a component and hide it. For now, what I like to do is say like, how tall was this first? So 36 or something. So if we did like height 8, that's looking close enough, right? I guess we could like get it in there. It's close enough. I don't think there isn't a height 9, and 10 is probably, actually 10 looks pretty spot on. Let's go with 10. So 10's there. This is, we're not going to get pixel perfect colors, but I just want to confirm that this isn't like a pure black, right? It's actually some kind of like off gray. So what we could do, and actually I said we were going to start with the light theme, so let's actually switch over to that. I hate the light theme. It freaks me out. It hurts my eyes. Like, ugh. You can see like I just lit up. I can't stand this. See if I can make it smaller. So this is like some kind of weird dark purpley gray. I think what we'll do is just keep this in like a grayscale. I don't know if Tailwind has like a purpley gray. Let's see. Tailwind css.com. If I can't find what I'm looking for in like 2 seconds, we're gonna go fix the Intellisense plugin. I want like palette, maybe default color palette. Yeah. So it's like It's not quite indigo. Maybe indigo is like the closest thing you had, but this is almost like a reddish color going on. So we'll just stick with our gray scales for right now. Ooh, we got stone and zinc and gray. I like that. Slate. Might roll with slate. Slate seems cool. So we'll say this is BG Slate 800 maybe. The important thing is just going to be to get the relative colors here straight. So we'll leave that block there. Now we've got another section that basically fills the rest of the page. And it's divided into two boxes. So we'll call that out. Up here, I'll leave a comment that says this is our header. You might, so I've done this, I've said like this might be a possible header component. You know, if you were designing like this was a card in a list in a grid or something like that, and you were doing it just in HTML, like just fragments HTML, you might call it out and make more sense. This is obviously going to be our header. But the next thing's going to be kind of this content area. So you can go crazy and do stuff like make it semantic, stuff like that. I enjoy div soup, so I'm gonna keep it divvy. So let's say this is our main content area. In practice, this might be like, look at the things that change here. Like, this is almost feeling like our router view a bit. So we'll have to think about that. But for right now, we'll say this is the content area. And now inside of there, we're gonna have some divs. We'll get rid of this stuff. So we know one of them, this is kind of your channel browser sidebar thing. And then this is chat, messages, main content. Let's not call this out specifically. So the one thing we do want to do is, this takes up specific height. We want to have this kind of take up the rest of the height. And that's probably the only thing we wanted to do. So I'm going to give it, I'm just going to give it a color. I don't know that I need to, per se. But we'll say it's BG white for right now. Let's actually, before I do that, let's look at the differences between the light and dark again. So yeah, when you're dark, you are more of like a straight up grayscale, and then the light is more of that indigo. But we're not going to get hurt by going. Let's just take this off. We'll set the colors on these divs. So we know that starting out, this one is going to be BG white. We'll stick with slate, but it's going to be a lighter slate. So maybe it's 600 on the left. And then we need both of these to kind of go their entire heights. So this one's going to have a fixed width that it looks like, okay, so that this content up here is centered until you get to like this breakpoint. We'll fine tune all that later. But when we do that, this width is going to get important. So let's line it up like this. And then we can come over here and start playing with widths. So we'd say like width 32 is probably not big enough. I also need to, let's set a static height on it right now just to get it shown. But we'll have to play with that. So it's probably 64. So this kind of, how did I know it's 64? one of the things I do like about Tailwind a lot is that it kind of you're working with a design system. So these scales are, you know, common in web development. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Slack UI team is not using like the same sorts of scales on like how like widths and heights and font sizes and line heights and all these different things. But, you know, if we were doing this all by hand, we'd be adjusting per pixel, but we can hit something that's rough. And like, I think this is dead on, just like the height 10 was more or less dead on. One thing I'm noticing is there's more contrast, or seems to be more contrast here than there is here, ignoring the color. So let's try like maybe it's a Slate 700. We'll roll with this for now. We don't want to get into the mindset of like adding these custom, you know, a 750 or something like that. It doesn't need to be that close, but yeah. So we need that to go the entire height. So this parent is already set up to do that. What we can do here is kind of similar to what we did up top, and say flex call. And probably gonna have to mess with this a little bit more. I always do. This one will have to be flex call, and then we can say, actually we don't want that to be flex call. This one should put them side by side. There we go. Like magic, it just works. So now we have a full height. And then these two divs are side by side. And if I want to do like a BG red 50 just to show that it's there. Do a similar deal there. Right. So the way the CSS class list works is the like to reorganize, I guess, these lists by what I feel is the most important contextually. Ultimately, it ends up getting hidden in a component, so you don't care so much. But the important thing here is we've got a flex parent that extends the entire height. So this box down here goes full height of the page beyond what's in our header. Then it itself is a flex parent that has two children. The one on the left is a static width, and it always will be until we hide it for responsive views. The one on the right fills the rest of the space. The rest of this is organizing things for its children. So these are all both of these are going to be stacked in layout sooner or later. So we can take this BG red off and say BG white now. Let's go back. So we'll stick in here for a little bit. And we're getting into some typography, so we're going to get it out of our system, and then we're going to go get our Lato font hooked up, and I can show you how to get that wired into Tailwind. We've also got some iconography here and drop downs. We're not going to do drop downs today. We'll do those tomorrow. So we'll just get the non-interactive bits out of here. So we've got some icons coming in. What we're probably going to end up using for this package or for this app is hero icons. And I have a package I wrote for kind of wrapping these up. Normally you can copy these as like SVGs. There are, actually, let's take a look at this real quick. There's view libraries, but the thing I don't like about the view libraries shipped by Tailwind Labs is each one of these is like a separate import, separate component that you bring in. And that ends up being really good for your bundle size because they can kind of tree shake all the hero icons view solids that you're not using. But it's bad for me when I'm looking in my markup fragments for icons I see Beaker, you know, whatever. I see the icon name first, not icon, and I can't find the icon quickly just scanning. So I wrote a library called View Hero Icons. Next is Hero Icon or Hero Icon next. Hero Icon. Yeah, View Hero Icon. And we'll install that as a dev dependency and bring that in for our icons. While that's rolling, we can keep on kind of moving forward. So we want this to say, first we need this section here. So let's do that. And it looks like we got some like borders and stuff going on. Possibly around the entire thing, but there's definitely some left action going on here, maybe not on the right. So what is this? This represents the current instance and like some options or whatever, and then your new. So it's got a div that is going to be taller than the box up above it. So let's say 12. And it's got a border. I really can't tell if it doesn't have a right one, but we can do like this to get rid of that right. Can I do this? Yeah. This is a lot harder without the autocomplete stuff going on. And then we want our border color to be like a light slate. Is that not a thing? Let's get the Intellisense plugin working. So it's this. Just updated. I just wonder if like over here this is bugged out. It looks like there's a giant exception. Package.json syntax error. Doesn't like our package.json, I guess, or its package.json. What if there's a way to like restart language server? Tailwind CSS. Let's try uninstalling it. And then reinstalling it, and maybe it'll start the language server and be happy. Yeah, I just installed that. Please work. Life's so much harder when this isn't working. Okay, it's working. Great. So you can highlight over the classes and see like, you know, what the hell's going on. So I want slate 300. But, oh, maybe, no. I'm being a dum-dum. I want this to be a little bit darker. Yeah. Let's do something like that. That's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be tonight. So let's get our window back. There's going to be some padding here, but let's go ahead and get our text in. So this will end up being like a button or something, I think, just to make it interactive. Chat button. Put that in the wrong place. move that over here. And then we're going to have some icons. So I want this to be whack chat and then a chevron down, a very small chevron down next to it. So we'll go ahead and bring in our icon class or icon component. So import icon from view hero icon next, icon, and then this allows us, especially not used, get rid of this too. This one's actually a great one to turn on in production. And that's probably how we'll configure a lot of these. Instead of just leaving them off everywhere, they'll be off in dev and like they'll fail in production, or maybe they warn in dev, but they don't do this screen shit. Like, I'd rather just see it over here in orange, rather than it just interrupting your flow as you're working. All right, so anyway, we're gonna have this there, the button next to the text. I want to have maybe this div, because we can put it inside the button. We'll have an icon name, chevron down, and it'll be super small, and we'll say don't shrink. And now I think this is going to be white. The whole thing's actually going to be white. So this should get covered there. Let's restart. So there's our chevron. Now we need to get those on the same line. So easiest way to do that is to say flex items center space X, and then how much space you want between the two elements, and that gets them going. So it looks like, I think over here, not here. These are like a little bit closer together maybe. So there's that. This whack chat it looks bold. Not like super bold, so I think this is too much. But maybe like semi-bold. And it looks a little bit larger. So we'll say text large. Yeah. There's going to be some padding on the left and right. I'm not going to worry about the top and bottom, I don't think, because we're going to end up centering these two elements with one another. So let's go ahead and get the this compose message button in. So this is basically going to be an icon. We need to make an icon inside of a circle. So we can say name equals, we need to go find the component for that. So it looks like a pencil. So I'm going to go to row icons and I'm going to search for pencil. Pencil alt seems legit. The other thing is, like, so they have these solid variants or outline. I think I have it set up where my defaults are solid, so I can put outline and it'll use the outline version of it. So let's look at that real quick. So that's something. This is, they look the same. Unless I'm just losing it. I might be losing it. View hero. Yeah. Shit, what is the default? I'm curious now. Default should be false for both of these. It's outline by default. Ooh, there's actually a bug in here. This is going to pull outline no matter what. Right here, we should have a ternary or something that there should be a conditional that marks whether this is pulled from outline or solid. So I'll solid prop does not work as expected. And we'll just remember to go do that later. So we'll go ahead and mark it up as outline because that's the one we want anyway. But yeah, so this is a dark icon on a white circle. So we've already got the dark part of it down. We need to make it a little bit smaller. So we'll say this is like a width 5, height 5, flex shrink 0. Yeah, that'll be close. So now over here, we want this to be first BG white. Okay, so we should get, you know, I think this ends up being a span. That's why it's not showing white background or whatever. But we can say like, or no, it's just being slow because now it's working. So I want to make this flex so that it doesn't go full width on us like that. This is going so slow. Line flex. Okay, we're good. Sometimes, I think it's this laptop, it just gets mad and like updates just don't work. Shrug. So it is going to have a white background. We want to make it fully rounded. So you can say rounded full. And now we want to give it some padding. So we can be like P4, it's too much, P2, it's closer. We won't know for sure until we get them kind of side by side. So to do that, we can go back up to the parent and we'll flex items center that. And then we'll justify between. So basically make them stay as far apart from one another as possible. Right? So now let's introduce that padding back in here. So we can say PX4 maybe. That might be too much. Let's take a look. It's pretty close. It looks like our circle, our little icon here could be a little bit smaller. And that's probably, you could adjust the icon to get it a little bit smaller. And that's, you know, the icon looks a little bit small, a little bit too small now. It's not as legible. I think these icons, I forget which one it is, but like one of them is designed to be at width 5 and the other is width 6. It's probably the outlines are designed to do width 6 and the solids are width 5, but I don't know. I don't remember. I think we have, maybe there's a 2.5. I don't know. See, that's too much. So we're not going to make a 2.3, right? I don't want that. The one thing we could do, and I'm not going to do this, but it's a feature in the new just-in-time compiler in Tailwind that you can use. It's actually kind of neat. So, and actually I didn't want to go that way. I wanted to go smaller. So this is, I think, perfect. It's really damn close. But anyway, what I was going to say is, let's say like, for whatever reason, this is 6 pixels. I think this is 8. You were like, man, I really need it to be 7 pixels. You can just do this bracket syntax stuff here, and it will on the fly compile this as a class in the final CSS output, and you can use it. But you have to know, like, you're jumping outside of your design system at this point. You're no longer on like some golden ratio scale or whatever. So let's do 1.5. This could be lighter, something I'm kind of noticing, but you know, we'll fine tune that later. So now we got whack chat done. Let's get our, so like this is going to be how you get to the channel browser. I think what I might do is just say, we'll forget this, and we'll have this control where you can browse channels that way. Eventually, we are going to implement this because this is like where you see like your different notifications, and there's like a user preference to show these all the time, like individually or not. So we'll add all that, but for now, we don't really need this. So before we do that, I want to come through here and kind of think about naming of things here. So this might be a what would we call this component? This is like instance preferences or settings. So this is where you'd like invite people. You can create a channel from here. You can add, click on plugins. They're not plugins, apps or whatever it is. This will be our compose message button, maybe. So you can see, you kind of like start flagging some of these things as different, maybe what we call these different components when we extract them. But we don't have to do that now. Okay, so here we're going to make room for our channel list. And this definitely, you can already tell, is going to be a reusable component. You can tell because like it's got a title. It's like a collapsible list. It's got these controls here, and they have different labels, like different options and things, but it's kind of the same dealio. They'll have list items. A list item probably has like a label and an icon, maybe. So, oh, cat wants back in now. Just keep the door open and let him come and go as he pleases. Give me 1 second. Okay. So we'll do. This will be like a generic UI component we probably extract at some point, but the only thing we're going to do right now is just recognize that there is a pattern here. We'll just mock it out. So we're going to have kind of a div wrapping this whole section. We're going to call this out as, possible collapsible list component thing, right? Down here, we're going to have a wrapper or container for the heading. And it's going to have an arrow down. Width 5 height 5. Text slate 400 maybe. Yeah, it's too dark. We'll have a span that has channels in it. And then there's these two controls here. And actually, let's go ahead and wrap this in a button, because this is going to be interactive. The whole thing probably is wrapped in a button, because the whole thing is like interactive along this axis here. We're not going to worry about it now. Whenever we go to wire that up, we can reorganize some of this stuff. So we'll say button, button. This will be our vertical hamburger and a plus sign. So I know the plus sign is probably just called plus. I don't know what our meatball vertical, dots vertical. Let's say plus. So I don't know if we want plus or plus small, but we'll take a look. Not bad. I don't want arrow down. I want something else down. I mean, we may not have it. We might have to just roll with a chevron down for now. Give it triangle. Doesn't look like we have one. We'll roll the chevron down for now. All right, so when we hover over these, we also want this like rounded corner, lighter background. We want these flexed together, these flexed together, and then them both separated. So if I want to separate, I know I'll need to wrap these in a container so that I can kind of split them up. And this is where it starts to get a little bit, you know, it can get a little hairy. Because you got all these divs flying around. That's where it's important to kind of continue breaking things up with either spaces or throw some comments in here. Ultimately, they all get extracted out as components, and you kind of bury some of this complexity a little bit. But in the development flow or whatever, it gets a little weird, or it can. So something to look out for. So we'll say this is the parent. We'll make flex items center, and then justify between. So this should get them flattened out at least, and then spread apart. It looks like these all need to be a little bit smaller, maybe. So we'll see what doing like 3 here looks like. That's closer. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit lighter, so we can see it pop a little bit better. I almost wonder if, are these all the same color? Yeah. So let's go ahead and pop this up here. Only affected the text. Oh wait, no, we've got it overridden down here. Okay. Next thing you have to think about is like, so eventually this content will be nested inside of this div. So when we're doing this padding, we need to allow for this bled edge here. So that does mean like we aren't going to expect to see padding in this container. We're going to leave that alone, and we'll control padding within each one of these. So what that may mean is say like here we could say px4 might be too much. Looks like the arrow is aligned with the title, so it probably is 4. And then py, say 1. It's kind of hard to tell. But, alright, let's do this button real quick. So these need to be side by side with a little bit of space between them. So let's set that up. Class, flex, item center. Center. Space X 1 maybe. And it's gonna have kind of there really isn't a lot of space between the edge of the button and this, so it kind of looks like it's closer, but when we add some padding here, it'll get a little bit better. So the first thing is I'm gonna go ahead and give this a background color, just so I can kind of see what's going on. So our background color of the nearest parent is what? Border Slate, BG Slate 700. So let's make this BG Slate 600. Let's go ahead and do 500 just so my broke ass eyes can actually see it. We'll do some padding around the edge. It's probably too much, but let's rounded that. And then pop it down maybe to 1. That's probably more like, say, text small. It's probably gonna be too small. So I'm not gonna fuss with this all that much. I do want it to be relative to the box here. So it looks like this box is a little bit bigger. Let's try 1.5. But then when you look at that, our channel versus this channel, it's close. We won't know until we load in a font to we won't be able to fine tune this until we load in a font. So now we need to make this hover instead, and we can go ahead and think about what's a better hover state. So that's probably it. So now we can just say hover that, and now when we hover, it shows up. So that's good. It's a shame we don't have this arrow here. But we can go find us an SVG for that at some point pretty easily. So now we basically just need to make these buttons look like the other one. So this is where you get a little bit, the feeling I'm doing inline styles and stuff. But I think tomorrow when we come back through here, so this obviously works now. Maybe we made these a little bit smaller. Yeah, I'm happy enough with that right now. What I was going to say is we are without a doubt going to end up with a button component. There's just going to be buttons all over this app. So you can already see this is duplicated, this is duplicated, this is duplicated. But what if we came down and said, okay, well, we've seen this pattern enough now. What if the interface to this was icon dots vertical, and that was it for this one, right? So you can imagine if this was subbed out with that and it encapsulated all this styling, you'd be good. But then you'd look here and be like, okay, well, we have that, but it's subtly this icon's just a little bit smaller, right? So you might be like, well, does it really need to be height 3? Let's take a look. And I bet once we get our SVG, it might, a triangle SVG, maybe it doesn't, and this problem goes away. But up here, our instant setting button, do we really need a specific button for that? In practice, we will, because it's going to wrap a modal as well, or a drop down as well. But even inside of that drop down, there might be a button with icon equal chevron down, but the contents of it would be whack chat. And again, it'd be the same kind of thing going on here, but we would style it different. And this is bigger, so maybe it's text size equals large, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to play around with it. But you can kind of see you start off with just fragments of HTML and classes all over the place, and then you kind of, over time, as you feel pain, extract that. The nice thing about going this route too is feeling that pain and thinking, okay, you're going to come up with a design system or a way you go about organizing things, and you challenge it several times in quick succession before you try to abstract it. Versus you could spend 3 hours on a button getting all these different props set up and all this configurable, this all flexibility or whatever, and in practice it's not used. It's not able to be used. Okay, so we've got some channels. I want to bump that down a little bit just because it's bugging me. So we'll do that here. We'll just set a margin type of like 3. If we had that other setting up here, it'd be fine, but we don't. So there's our channel stuff. Now we need to get the actual list of channels. So this is we're gonna go ahead and draw out like all this. So the active state, our hovers, we get a little darker in the back there. And then this add channels item. So our collapsible list thing. This is basically the list header of sorts. This is our list content. And then each one of these will be a list item. Possibly. The names of this will change. I don't want to have a component. It's just list header, list item. It's specific to the channel list. Or specific to the sidebar, whatever we call it. So we know we're going to have that icon and the word general repeated a couple of times. So we'll go ahead and get an icon. I think the name of this is like hashtag, yeah. Class width 5 flex shrink 0, and then we'll have a span that is general. Flex box these so they're side by side. Flex item center. Space X2. Alright, so 2 is probably too much. I think 1 out of 2 is about right, according to this. Our hashtag's a little bit big. I think we're on a theme of width 4 is probably going to be just accurate. Font's a little big. Let's try text small. We won't mess with it too much because we don't know what we don't know yet. It is definitely going to be white text though and a white icon. So we can say text white for the whole thing. That's not really white. It's a light slate. You almost never want to do like pure white or pure black in your designs. Generally looks like poopy poop. Alright, so over here I'm gonna kind of cheat a little bit, mostly because I want to logically split up these classes. We know that this class list right here is probably common to everything. The only thing we're missing is padding, but it's kind of hard to see the padding until we get this background. Now, we know the next class list is going to be we'll say it's our active state or whatever. So eventually this will either be like a computed prop or something, but this will be conditional based on the active status. So it's probably going to be like, think our router active class or whatever. But anyway, this is some BG blue. Took a stab in the dark. Blue ain't going to be right. Yeah, that's not exactly right. I wonder what other blues do we have? It's more of this like sky or cyan, maybe. It's got some gray in it. It feels like. Let's do the sky. So 700 maybe. It's kind of hard to tell. We aren't going to beat ourselves up too much over this. I think that needs to be like a smidge darker. That's my only thing. That's probably close. That's probably close. So we'll say PY of 1 just to see if we can get that. And let's see if I can move this down a little bit. So look at it. It's like it just kind of starts falling into place. Like the spacing and everything just lines up. It makes me want to. I can't right click here, of course. Let's inspect. It makes me want to go look for Tailwind classes. See, they've got their own design system here. Like these are all compiled classes. I bet they're based on the same kind of like theory or whatever. It's not coincidence that everything's just kind of lining up, and we're not having to add a bunch of classes here. Let's see. I want to add like a really long channel name. Really long channel name to test padding. Cool. So we truncate, and there is a bit of padding over here, but it's less than this. It's almost half as much. So what we'll do is get our left visually correct, and then we'll have it for the right. So PL 8. That is good enough for me. And PR 4 then. All right. So we probably are good. We'll get it. We'll fine tune. Like we'll get it almost exactly later. Okay, so we got general. Then we've got these other others down here. So this will show active channel. Down here, we're going to take this BG Sky off. And what we'll do instead is say we want a hover effect. So what is this? The smidge darker than what we have. So we can say BG Slate 800 maybe. I think we're on 700. Yeah. We'll say 800. The other thing I'm noticing is these aren't, they don't look clickable or whatever. So the correct thing to do is to probably make these buttons. The other thing you could do is just put like cursor pointer on the divs, but these probably should be buttons. When we do that, we have to adjust here. So we can say width full, and that gets us back. And this is supposed to be random. And now we can keep on copying. So this is really long channel name to test padding. And this is whack dev. I can already tell this slate is probably too light. Let's adjust that a bit. The channel name could probably go to the same, or the channel title. All right, so now we need to truncate this. There's a Tailwind class for that. The text overflow truncate. This will just, I think, let's see. trying to think, like, what's the difference between truncate and text ellipsis? Probably nothing. So we'll come in here. Say truncate. Maybe that's the, looking at that, it just works. So like, it's really neat to be able to do this stuff in CSS. Because like, I remember way back when you'd go write like a filter function or something to like truncate, and you'd set like a maximum length, and hopefully you're in a, you know, in a space where you can use some kind of JavaScript framework or jQuery or something. But I've also done this like in page flipper apps where you just render all this stuff on the back end, and it's a pain in the dick. So being able to do all this is awesome. So direct messages, I'm gonna bail on because it's getting late, but it's basically just gonna be copy paste this, so we can do that tomorrow. And honestly, in fact, it's getting late enough that I kind of don't want to even get started on this, because if I do, I know I won't want to finish it. So how about tomorrow we'll pick up with this area here and get all that drafted out, and get the rest of like the header bar done, or a little avatar up here, people in the channel, and maybe we can start dipping into some modals and things. For a lot of our modals and drop downs and all these things, we're going to be using a library called Headless UI. This is it's a styleless component library written for use with Tailwind CSS. And it's different than I'm sure it's different. Go check it out. It's gonna be different than a lot of packages you've seen. So, as an example, let's say I have a modal. So they implement this modal, but let's say I wanted this to have thinner rounded corners, or I want to style it differently, style the heading differently, typically, if you went and grabbed like a Vuetify or some other design library that does modals or drop downs or whatever, you end up having to write a bunch of CSS to style it first. But it's also, like, in a lot of ways, like Vuetify is particularly bad. If you want to have like something look custom Vuetify, you're almost working against that framework, because the framework wants you designing in material design, not kind of rolling your own flavor of it. The way this works is these components only handle the behavior of a dialog or a drop down or a list box or a toggle or whatever. They do nothing for the styling. So it's completely on you to style all these things. And what they do is give you these components, these renderless components that handle like all your keyboard navigation and stuff like that. So the fact that I can come in here, click outside, they handle that. Hit escape, they handle that. So it's pretty nice. And if you use Tailwind UI, they've set it up so that you can copy their examples as the Headless UI code or whatever. So it kind of just works when you bring it in. So anyway, this is what we're going to be using. So here's like a radio group, and they have like, you can see these custom radio group label. There's your vModel binding, and then you give these different labels, like, or different components, it's labels here for accessibility. So they'll handle like all the ARIA tags you need for this radio group. Here's an option. They'll handle keyboard navigation between these. So I can kind of work my way to focus it. And now if I hit down and up, I can go this way, or left and right. If I hit enter, it selects one, So it's that type of stuff they take care of. It's really nice. Because at the end of the day, there's no point in us maintaining our own modal code. There's no point in us writing our own drop downs. We should just pull this in and use it. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, this actually isn't a bad. This doesn't look like much. We spent a lot of time in here, kind of like polishing, I think, but this will start to pick up pretty quickly. And really, like, how much more is there? It's just setting up a loop here for. I've never noticed this. You could just like. Yeah, I've never noticed these. It's usually just like the edit or whatever. Um, I think there's in the look and feel there isn't much to do. It's going to be more the UX that we're going to have some fun with. It's like having a little emoji selector and stuff like that is going to take some time to write, but we'll get there. We will get there. Anyway, I'm gonna get off here. I'll be back on earlier tomorrow, so around 9 or so, and we will pick up where we left off. All right, y'all have a good one. See ya.